Fouke, Arkansas is a sleepy little town off of I-49, about 11 miles south of Texarkana. It's best known for the reported sightings of what came to be called the Fouke Monster, or the Southern Sasquatch, back in the early 1970s. Actually, the sightings had been reported going back to the 1940s, and that resulted in a 1972 docudrama called The Legend of Boggy Creek. A little bit of movie trivia here for you. It was filmed on an old 35mm camera, and it was using locals as extras. The Legend of Boggy Creek turned a $100,000 loan from a local trucking company into a $20 million box office and DVD sales boom. It was eventually the 10th highest grossing film in 1972. Bet you didn't know that. Bet you'd never even heard of it. The movie was produced and directed by a Texarkana advertising salesman by the name of Charles Pierce. There was a sequel released in 1977 called Return to Boggy Creek, starring Dawn Wells from Gilligan's Island and Dana Plato from Different Strokes. It wasn't really a sequel. In this one, the Fouke Monster was actually a good guy. Boggy Creek 2, The Legend Continues, went back to the original storyline in 1985. Boggy Creek, The Legend is True, and The Legacy of Boggy Creek were released straight to DVD in 2011, believe it or not. They've still been making movies about this. Anyway, Fouke, Arkansas isn't exactly a happening place. It was founded as a Baptist colony in 1890 on land donated by George Fouke, hence the name. The town's history spans the growth of the Texas and Pacific Railroad, the oil boom of the 1920s, the violence of the Prohibition era from the 20s to the 30s, and, of course, the economic hardships of the Great Depression. Covering just a single square mile, Fouke is now home to just about 900 people. The median income is only about $25,000. And the Fouke School District is the largest employer. It serves over 1,000 students and about 160, 170 employees. It's home to the Miller County Historical Museum. They dedicated a large Veterans Memorial Park back in 2010, and in 2013 they even started holding a regular Boggy Creek Festival to promote the community and to share information about the Fouke Monster. It's a typical small town in the Deep South. It actually sounds kind of quaint. But last week, something very atypical happened in the sleepy town of Fouke, Arkansas. It wasn't a festival or a new building or a movie about local lore. It was a murder. It was the first violent crime in Fouke in a generation. Krista Shockley was a 21-year-old college student. She was working 2 jobs. On Thursday morning, February 2nd, at about 2 a.m., the newspaper delivery man stopped by the Easy Mart in Fouke, where Krista worked the graveyard shift, and there he found her on the floor, shot to death, the victim of an apparent violent robbery. Gun control advocates are often quick to seize on these kinds of awful stories to push the narrative that we need more restrictive gun laws. And their favorite restrictive gun law is the universal background check, a law that wouldn't have stopped a single murder in the past 50 years. And I've commented on these stories in the past, asking what exactly would have stopped this, what background check would have prevented this. And the answer is none. The killer, now charged with capital murder and aggravated robbery, is 12 years old. When you're looking at a murder committed by a 12-year-old child, it's unimaginable, it's unexplainable, it's horrific, said Terry Purvis, Fouke's mayor. Even if we knew exactly what happened, even if we knew the motive, even if we knew everything that went down, I don't know how anybody could ever understand what happened because of the age of the suspect, Purvis said. It's hard to wrap your head around this, the idea that a 12-year-old could do something so cold-blooded and ruthless. But the truth is that it's really not that hard to imagine. We see it every day on the streets of places like Chicago. And the gun banners use the deaths of childhood-aged gangbangers to bolster their stats when they talk about children who are the victims of gun violence. But the issue is not about the gun, and it never is. It's the wicked and evil nature of mankind, and the degradation of the American family, and a culture that has long ago ceased to uplift us and just appeals to our baser instincts, our desire for sex and violence, hatred and greed. The family and its failure is the basis for much of the distress in America. The violence, the hate, the murder, the rape, the exploitation, the greed that we see on a daily basis. Children raised without proper respect, poorly educated, and often without a father in the home. Now, before you go saying this is a black thing, or this only happens in minority communities in the inner city, or it's a failure of the black community, no. This is not a black thing. It's not a white thing. It's a human thing. The population of Fouke is 96% white, and almost 3% of the remainder is Native American. Less than 1% is black. This is not a race issue. This is a human race issue. As Luther wrote in the Large Catechism almost 500 years ago, "Where do so many rogues come from that must daily be hanged, beheaded, and broken upon the wheel? Don't they come from disobedience to parents because they will not submit to discipline and kindness?" When modern terms replace the words hanged, beheaded, and broken on the wheel for shot, imprisoned, and executed. By God's punishment, Luther continues, they cause us to behold their misfortune and grief, for it seldom happens that such perverse people die a natural or timely death. We see this every day in the streets of our major cities. But it's not just the children who, as Luther puts it, refuse to submit to discipline and kindness. It's parents who refuse to discipline at all. Or, worst case scenario, they refuse to be a parent. Guns are not the problem. Children who refuse to be disciplined and parents who shirk their responsibilities as parents are the problem. A generation that is more concerned with me, myself, my pleasure, my life, my time, and can't be troubled to take responsibility for their actions or their offspring, that's the problem. There's a real monster in Fouke, and that monster lurks in every city, in every home where children are raised lacking love and discipline. Taking away guns or forcing people to go through background checks won't cure the evil in the hearts of men. It won't drive away the monster. It will only prevent good people from defending themselves when the monster comes to their door.